In 1900, the average life expectancy was, for men, only 46 years old. Average life expectancy for women in 1900 was only 48 years old. Today, let's talk about longevity. Longevity is a duration of an individual's life. And of course, we're all different. We've got different genetics, we've got different backgrounds, we've got different life exposures. As a doctor, I can tell you when I actually see a patient, one of the things that I try to do the first time I meet them is to give a little bit of an assessment of what their life has been like, what their parents' survival was, and what kind of conditions they have and their relatives have. It gives me a little bit of a big picture view on what their overall risks are. But the idea of living as long as you can, longevity, has been around for tens of thousands of years. In fact, it's as old as mankind. You know, that quest for longevity is the stuff of legends. You've heard of Ponce de Leon, the explorer, the Spanish explorer who discovered Florida and Puerto Rico. The Fountain of Youth, Ponce de Leon, right? Fu Manchu, that mythical character in China who was always looking for the little vial of longevity. And of course, the Holy Grail, also associated with this quest for immortality. So here's the good news. We are indeed living longer as human beings. Let me give you some numbers. In 1900, right? So over 100 years ago, the average life expectancy was, for men, wait for it, only 46 years old. That was the average, okay? Average life expectancy for women in 1900 was only 48 years old. Women have always lived a little bit longer on average than men, but check it out, under 50 years old, more than 100 years ago, that was it. That was the average life expectancy. Today, we've improved that number a lot. So as of 2022, these are the numbers that you got to collect over a long period of time. Men and women born in 2022 can expect to live to 75 years old if you're a man and 80 years old if you are a woman. All right, 75 to 80, from 46 to 48 years old. That's a big jump over the course of 100 years. Now, why has life expectancy or longevity increased? This is long before people were actually biohacking and trying to look for supplements that could actually do this. Let me tell you, basically, life expectancy has improved because our conditions around us have actually improved as well. We've got better nutrition, less poverty. Now, obviously, some places still have extreme poverty, but compared to what it was like in 1900, we've got a lot less poverty. We've got better public health. Governments are organized. Communities are better organized to be able to actually have better sanitation, cleaner water. We've got antibiotics. 100 years ago, a little bit more, didn't have antibiotics. You got a cold, you got a flu, you got an infection. That was pretty much all you wrote, all right? Maybe not a cold, but definitely a serious infection, appendicitis. We also have vaccines. I know the current controversy around vaccines, but I can tell you it was a medical breakthrough that contributed to our longevity, all right? Why we live longer. Better maternal and neonatal care. A third of moms and babies actually died at childbirth. Way back then, didn't even have hand washing as a basic concept for reducing the risk of infection. So moms actually wound up dying of infection. All right. We have better health care in general. All right. These are some of the reasons that we're actually living longer than before. But we still want to live longer than we are now, right? So this is where science comes into play. And the first thing I want to say is so what's holding us back from even doing better? Well, now, even though we are living a lot longer than we did in 1900, we are dealing with chronic diseases that take us out. What am I talking about? I'm talking about cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, lung diseases are a big problem, and mental health issues like depression. All actually overall shorten our longevity. And of course, as we're living longer, we're beginning to see neurodegenerative diseases that are associated with older age, right? Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia. That's when the small blood vessels in your brain get narrow and hard and don't allow good blood flow, not enough blood flow to the brain. Parkinson's disease. These are common in the aging population, all right? And of course, then there are health inequities between, the economic discrepancies make it even harder for some people to optimize their lifespan. So we still have a long ways to go to be able to actually optimize where we are. And what about genetics? Your genetics can make a difference. In fact, it's been estimated that about 25% in the variation of longevity are due to genes, the genes you inherited from your parents. Now, we don't actually know exactly which genes yet lead you to live longer and which genes lead you to live shorter on the whole. Obviously, there's some trends and patterns, and for some diseases, of course, but this is an area of active research. I'm a researcher, so I'm happy to tell you what we don't know for sure yet. And we haven't nailed down, pinpointed what are the genes. Of course, some really interesting research show that centenarians, people who live to 100, they've got some unique genetic features. But some people who can live an awful long time without those genetics as well. Obviously, the role of diet and lifestyle and the environment are huge as well. Here's an example of diet, all right? Eating ultra-processed foods shortens your lifespan, while eating whole plant-based foods, all right, and seafoods increases longevity, all right? And part of the reason is they lower the risk of chronic diseases. You don't have a chronic disease, you're more likely to live longer. Another factor in our diet are artificial chemicals that are found in our food. We're just beginning to unpack what they're actually doing. Now, we suspected for a long time that artificial preservatives and colorings and flavorings aren't good for us. Now the data is coming out what they actually do. And one of the things they do is they harm our gut microbiome. The healthy gut bacteria that live inside our gut, total about 39 trillion of these bacteria. These bacteria control inflammation. They lower inflammation. So when you hurt them, inflammation goes up. Inflammation goes up, chronic diseases start to appear. These healthy gut bacteria also boost our immune system. They actually raise our immune shields. You harm the gut bacteria, our immunity goes down. Our immune system's not so strong, we wind up getting infected. We wind up getting sicker. And cancer is kept at bay by a good, strong immune system. So when the immune system goes down, the risk for developing a cancer goes up as well. All right, so our gut microbiome is very exquisitely sensitive to what we're eating. And our food is also less healthy for us today because of the soil that our plants are grown in, right? Our plant-based foods come from plants that grow in soil. Compared to how things were decades or maybe hundreds of years ago, our soil has been contaminated by synthetic chemicals as pesticides. The soil microbiome is depleted. So the soil also contains a microbiome, and because that's compromised, our food becomes compromised as well, all right? Then the other thing that matters in our diet is microplastics. This is something that we've known about for a long time, that plastics everywhere, right? Your water container, your food storage containers, your plastic silverware at a picnic, the plastic plates everywhere, right? Plastic cups, drinking straws. We've always known that little bits of plastics would get everywhere, but only until the last few years have we been discovering these microplastic particles, tiny little particles, are actually floating around in our bloodstream. They can get into our brain, they can get into our organs. They've actually been found in testicles and semen. They've actually found even the plastic embedded in a study of men in the penis, all right? And it's also been shown that these microplastics embed themselves in the plaques that narrow arteries in the neck and probably elsewhere as well, and that the connection between plastics and health outcome is that if you had microplastics in the carotid plaque, this is a study from Italy that was published recently, the presence of plastics increased your chances of having a heart attack or stroke by 4-fold, all right? Now, we're not thinking it's so harmless anymore. We know that microplastics are around. So microplastics is another factor that can actually affect our longevity, our overall health, and how long we're actually going to live. Lifestyle. Let's talk about lifestyle factors that can actually impede longevity. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about foods. I'm going to get there, okay? I wanted to actually set the stage for you to say why it's so important to take action. Our lifestyle has changed over the last century. We've become more and more sedentary. You know that term couch potato? It's a little derogatory, right? Like nobody's like a couch potato, right? It sounds so bad. But actually, we're winding up sitting a lot. Think about it. You got a laptop, you're working remotely, you're probably doing it sitting on a chair as opposed to moving around. And being sedentary, sitting down, actually removes physical activity from our lives, all right? Less walking, more driving, more sitting, more surfing, more screen time. You get it. We're spending less time outdoors moving like the human body is supposed to move, all right? I mean, think about it. If we were evolved to actually just sit and look at a screen, we'd have 2 arms with fingers and no feet, and we'd just be like a pillow with two arms and hands. That's it. That's not how we need to actually keep moving. So, having said all that, these are all the reasons that we don't optimize our longevity. What can we do? Green tea. Green tea is one of my favorites. It contains a bioactive called catechins, specifically EGCG. That's epigallocatechin 3 gallate. EGCG, it's a tongue twister, but this natural bioactive in tea, when we drink it, goes into our body and does a lot of amazing things. We do know that it lowers inflammation, which is critical for long-term health, essential for longevity. We also know that it actually protects our telomeres, which are the protective caps at the end of our DNA that start to burn down as we age. So green tea slows that cellular aging process down. Green tea also helps to nurture and keep healthy our vascular endothelium. So vascular is blood vessel, endothelium is the delicate lining inside our blood vessel. This is actually what allows blood to flow smoothly right through the body. The better the blood flow, the longer the life. When your blood vessels are healthy, you have a shot at being healthy. When your blood vessels are sick, you have no chance of actually having optimal health. And so green tea actually facilitates all of this. And green tea has also been shown to be good for your gut microbiome. Healthy gut, healthy life. We do know that people who reach super centenarian ages, they actually have very, very unique gut microbiomes. Green tea actually helps to get you there. My great uncle, by the way, lived to 104 years old, and he attributed his longevity to living at the base of a tea mountain, where every morning at 4 a.m. he would actually get up and walk up to a tea pavilion and sip cups of tea. He probably had 10 cups of green tea every day. So physical activity, green tea, all these things are quite important for longevity. Proteins are the building blocks of life. They're critical if you actually want to live long and if you want to prosper, thrive. Because as we age, we lose protein and muscle mass. Now, losing muscle mass is actually a setup for becoming frail and less mobile, which cuts into your lifespan. So you need to actually keep your protein in and build it up with exercise, and that's the same as being a bodybuilder. Now think about maintaining strength during aging as bodybuilding over the course of a lifetime. So up to the age of 40, you should be eating about 50 to 60 grams of protein per day for the average size person. And between the ages of 40 and 50, that's above the age of 40, you start losing muscle mass. An example you might see is, think about the older person that you might have seen in your life, somebody with really, really thin arms or really, really thin legs. Their body might actually be looking okay, but you can tell they're actually losing muscle mass. This is called sarcopenia, and it increases the risk of falls, where you can break a hip or worse. And falling is actually the precipitating event for older adults who are living independently, where after a fall, especially if they break their hips, they can't manage anymore by themselves. They've lost their independence and they need assisted living or a caregiver to be able to get around safely. So you don't want to become frail. You don't want to actually fall. If you're going to live long, you want to be able to live as independently as possible. And developing that strength, keeping up that muscle mass is absolutely critical. So adding protein to your diet after the age of 40, somewhere between 75 to 90 grams of protein a day is kind of where you want to aim at. Now, every person is different, which is why it's called personalized nutrition. So there's no one hard number that you want to actually stick to. And if you're physically active, you might even need more protein. And as I was saying before, you need protein and the use of your muscles, exercise, in order to be able to actually benefit from that added protein intake. So if you want to do this right, I suggest consulting a trained nutritionist and explaining that you're trying to optimize your protein goals. And this will be useful because they'll help you calculate the right amount of protein that's tailored to you, tailored to your body size, to your physical activity, to your other health conditions you might have and other factors. And that's why I'm not giving you a black and white single number that you need to hit, because everybody's different when it comes to the amount of protein that they need. So what are some of the best sources of protein to help you towards longevity? Well, meat is a good source of protein. You know, beef, pork, chicken, duck, fish, shellfish, all good sources of protein. For example, a 3-ounce serving of beef has about 20 grams of protein. A 3-ounce serving of chicken breast has about 25 to 26 grams of protein, even a little bit more than beef. Ground pork has about 22 grams of protein per 3-ounce serving, about the same amount as ground turkey. But we know that in the end, that eating large amounts of red meat, not healthy in the long run. So we're talking about beef here. And longevity is all about the long game. So I encourage you to think about other sources of protein besides red meat. As I mentioned, seafood is another source of protein. For example, salmon is a good source of protein, as well as a good source of omega-3 fatty acids, which are good for longevity. A 3-ounce serving of salmon has about 22 grams of protein, about the same amount as turkey. And cod, which is a mild white flesh fish, has about 19 grams per 3-ounce serving, and it's actually got a good healthy amount of omega-3s as well. Now, clinical studies of both salmon and cod show that these types of seafood are good for your metabolism. Through their omega-3s, they can help you burn harmful body fat, which reduces visceral fat, the kind of fat in the tube of your body, and actually lowers inflammation as well. So that's meat and that's seafood. But what about plant-based sources of protein? Because we know that people who eat more plant-based foods have better longevity. So we're talking about legumes like white beans, black beans, pinto beans, lentils, chickpeas, soybeans. These are all plant-based sources of protein, as well as good mineral content. The other benefit of these types of plant-based proteins, these legumes, is that they actually make you feel full. That's what we call satiety. And so if you feel full, you're also less likely to overeat in your next meal. Now, overeating actually overloads your metabolism, which actually can set you up for metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes, which cuts down on your longevity. So beans, legumes, actually a great way to actually get that source of protein. Now, I enjoy beans in a soup, bean soup or stew. Great way to actually have beans. And when you make one pot of beans, you're likely to actually have enough as leftovers, so you're actually saving time cooking as well. Now, another source of plant-based protein are tree nuts, pecans, walnuts, macadamias, pistachios, cashews, even pine nuts. And seeds are also a good source. Pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, all good sources of protein. Now, for tree nuts or seeds, I suggest you just take a handful with you as a snack during the day. Something you bring to the office, something you're going to have a bowl to snack on throughout the day if you actually want to get some protein in. Those are good snacks, and eating them actually are a great way to actually get some extra protein in. And they're a good source of dietary fiber. Dietary fiber feeds your gut microbiome, and when that's a good, healthy gut bacteria, and when your gut microbiome is fed, guess what? Lowers inflammation, and that sets you up to actually have more longevity as well. Now, a team of researchers from Harvard and Tehran University actually looked at just how powerful plant-based proteins are. They looked at 32 clinical studies that involved a total of 715,000 people over periods of time ranging from 3 years to 30 years. That's 3 decades. And found that those people who ate more protein from plants, even 3% more protein in plants, resulted in a lower risk of premature death by about 5%. All right, so you lower the risk of death, premature death, by 5% by just having more proteins. And another study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, so a very credible journal, looked at 416,000 people over 16 years and compared to what they were eating over that time for their health, and found that just shifting 3% of protein from animals to plants, shifting just 3% of the protein intake from animals, like beef, to plants, like beans, led to a 10% decrease in deaths from any cause. 10% decrease in death from any cause. And this is true for both men as well as women. Now, the reasons for better longevity by taking in plant protein compared to animal protein is thought to be due to the fact that animal protein has higher levels of methionine and branched chain amino acids. This is found in meat and not in plants, especially in red meat. And this is considered to be one of the triggers for chronic diseases. Now, more research needs to be done on this. But again, having more shift in protein from meats, red meats, to plant-based foods actually lowers overall mortality. Plant-based foods also have beneficial bioactives like polyphenols that can activate your health defenses, like your circulation, angiogenesis, help activate your stem cells, which help to regenerate and heal from the inside out, activate gut health. These are prebiotics. These polyphenols in plants help to protect your DNA, which can slow cellular aging, help repair DNA, and prevent DNA from being damaged from oxidative stress. And they can actually activate your immune system. So you got better immune protectiveness as well as lower inflammation. So plant-based proteins have actually a lot of other accompanying reasons why they may be beneficial for longevity as well. So you get other benefits in addition to the proteins. You want more good and less bad, choose plant-based proteins. So here are my top choices, 5 top choices of plant-based protein sources. Food number 1 are beans. I mentioned this already. White beans, black beans, fava beans, chickpeas, lentils. Great source of protein, help you maintain muscle mass. Also a good source of dietary fiber. Good for your gut microbiome, as I said before. And also beans help to reduce blood lipids, decrease blood glucose levels. All right, so all metabolically healthy as well. Now, how much protein are some beans, legumes? Let's talk about this. 1 cup of chickpeas has 14 grams of protein and 12 grams of dietary fiber. The dietary fiber is really, really important as well. So you're getting twofer, protein and dietary fiber. You can try, again, making a bean stew, bean soup, chickpeas. You can actually do all kinds of things with them. Just look up a recipe, chickpeas recipe, and hit video on Google, and you'll actually get shown from people who are really passionate about what they do, how to make something really tasty using chickpeas, for example. And clinical studies have shown that eating beans can help to lower your blood pressure as well, which lowers the risk of heart attack and stroke. So again, we're talking about longevity, we're talking about protein, and now we're talking about foods that contain protein, but also have other benefits and clinically shown connections to longevity as well. Eating plant-based foods like vegetables are always a good thing, but there are certain things that you should avoid if you want to get the most out of those vegetables. And this is actually very true for all aspects of your health, and it's true for longevity. So if living long and living well is what you're aiming for, then you got to watch this video to the end. And by the way, if you're enjoying my content, hit the subscribe button and spread the word about what I'm actually doing here. All right, ready? Let's jump in. Mistake number 1 when it comes to eating veggies, if you want longevity, is ruining the health of your vegetables by overcooking them. Okay? Now, I like to cook, so I'm going to talk to you about this from my own experience. Overcooking is a super common mistake, especially for people who don't cook very often, but even people who do cook. All right, if you don't pay attention to your food while you've got a lot of things going on, it's very easy to let vegetables overcook. All right, and by the way, overcooked vegetables are probably why you didn't like vegetables when you were a kid. I remember eating broccoli or peas at my elementary school cafeteria. Man, they were terrible. Soft, mushy, mealy, overboiled, oversteamed. And however they did it, I can tell you the texture was terrible and the vegetable taste was non-existent. All right. So when I went home, however, my mom, who was a great home cook, she always prepared the vegetables, even if they were similar vegetables like broccoli, in a completely different way. She stir-fried, sauteed, stewed the vegetables, and she had spices and oils and garlic and all kinds of sauces on them. And I loved the vegetables that were cooked at home. All right. But it makes a difference in terms of your experience at cooking. Now, carrots, another food that when I had them in the school cafeteria, I hated them. it was like eating orange glue. All right. Carrots on home, on the other hand, whether it's in a stew or in a soup, they had a little bit of a slight bite to them, but they were tasty. And they took on the flavors of the other things that were actually in the pot as well. And I liked the carrots at home. So when I was young, I learned about the harms of overcooking vegetables because they had no taste. And that made me completely disinterested in eating them. But at home, when they were cooked properly, I really enjoyed them. So it turns out that when you overcook vegetables, one of the things that happens is that you can destroy the bioactives, the polyphenols that are in the vegetables. So think about it. You boil vegetables, you boil broccoli. All right. What happens is that hot water over time will leach away the vitamins and will leach away the polyphenols right into the bath that they're actually boiling away in. The hot temperatures degrade the polyphenols. All right. For example, the sulforaphanes that are found in broccoli or in bok choy, which you should never boil anyway. But all these plant-based foods have natural bioactives, polyphenols that are actually good for your circulation, good for your stem cells, good for your antioxidant activity to protect your DNA, good for lowering inflammation, good for immunity. But if you destroy them by overcooking them, well, you're actually going to get some fiber from the plant, but not much else, all right? So you're actually missing the opportunity to boost your body's health defenses. And if you want to live long, all right, you got to have good, strong health defenses the entire journey of your life. So that's one of the things that you can do to destroy the protective aspects of plant-based foods is by overcooking, all right? So whatever you do, don't overcook your vegetables. Don't oversteam them. Don't overboil them. Don't overbake them. If the texture starts to change and they lose their flavor, you've actually crossed that line, all right? Always reel it in a little bit before. Try to aim for your vegetables to be just right, just like pasta. You got pasta that should be al dente. Your vegetables should be just perfectly done without ruining those polyphenols, all right? Now, you might be saying, well, wait a minute, Dr. Lee, then what happens if I'm actually adding vegetables to a stew or a soup, right? Minestrone soup, for example, or lentil stew. What about that, all right? You chop up lots of veggies and you throw them into lentil stew or lentil soup. What about the vegetables there? Because you're going to cook those for a long time. Well, it is true that in a soup or stew that the bioactives will be degraded, all right? But then guess what? And they'll be leached out, but they're being leached out into the broth that you're actually going to eat, and they don't get completely degraded, all right? And then you've got the more vegetables you add to a broth, the more of those polyphenols. It's going to be a whole soup of polyphenols, maybe less than when you would be eating them raw or freshly sauteed, but now they're all just sitting there. It won't degrade them all, and you get all the dietary fiber that's also packed in. You got to look at the whole picture, all right? It's true. Cooking veggies in a stew or a soup will degrade some of those bioactives and it'll leach them out, but it's in the broth that you're actually going to eat, all right? And by the way, that's one of the things that you want to do is to sip on that broth because it's got all kinds of flavor. That lovely flavor that you get when you sip a soup, that's actually the result of all those nutrients also coming out into the soup, all right? Now, the other thing that we got to talk about with broccoli, as an example, is that if you are going to cook broccoli, don't throw away the stems. Now, I've done research looking at the potency of broccoli for cutting off the blood supply to tumors. That's anti-angiogenesis. And guess what? The florets, the treetops of the broccoli, actually are very beneficial. They're quite active. But when we compared the treetops, the florets, with the stem of the broccoli. Broccoli is actually mostly stem and a little bit of treetop. If you go to a farmer's market, you'll see this. Get some broccoli. It really is this gigantic, like a baseball bat full of stem. A little bit of treetop. The stem has twice as much bioactivity, potency, as the treetop. All right? So if you're going to actually get broccoli, don't throw away the stem. In fact, slice it up sort of on a diagonal, and you can actually cook with it. All right. Many cultures actually that don't like to waste food will actually cook the stem of the broccoli. Absolutely delicious. A little bit of extra virgin olive oil, a little bit of chopped garlic, tiny touch of salt. You can saute that if you want to go Asian style, a little bit of oil, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of soy sauce, maybe a little oyster sauce, and you'll actually make some nice broccoli stem medallions that are actually a great way to actually have your veggies. All right. Now, the thing that is actually really amazing is that same principle holds true for carrots. We also studied carrots. Carrots are the yellow bottom or orange bottoms, but the big green top. So we actually thought, well, most people who buy carrots will actually chop off the leaves and toss them and cook with the taproot. That's what the orange or purple or different colors are. But it turns out when we compare the taproot, which is quite active for anti-angiogenesis, cutting off the blood supply to tumors. So the orange part is good, but guess what? The leafy part, twice as good. All right, don't throw away the leaves of the carrots as well. I would suggest making that into a pesto. That's actually the best way to do it. And if you're going to cook the carrots, remember, don't overcook the carrots. All right. So very, very important. One of the things I tell you about broccoli stems. Let's go back to that for a second. What else can you do if you don't really want to saute them? Stick them in a blender or a food processor and grind them up really fine and cook a soup. Now, in my first book, Eat to Beat Disease, I got it right here. I got a recipe that you're going to love. It is broccoli stem and oregano soup. And man, it is delicious. Very subtle, very sophisticated, but super easy to make. And it's actually made with a thing that most people don't cook with, which is the broccoli stem. So I encourage you to try it because it's got a lot of sulforaphanes in it. Really, really good. And by the way, the oregano in that soup recipe, guess what? Oregano has been shown to actually kill breast cancer stem cells. All right, this is laboratory research to show that the bioactives in oregano actually can kill those baby little stem cells that are made of, that cancer cells are coming out of in the breast to prevent the cancers from coming back. All right, so that's pretty cool with oregano. Lab research showing there's benefit to oregano. It's quite active, in fact. All right, so I'm going to buy broccoli, eat every part. Florets are good for you. Stems are twice as good for you, and you can combine them with other ingredients that are great for your taste buds and great for your health. And don't overcook it. All right, that's my first tip. My second don't do for your vegetables, all right, is don't cook or serve them in unhealthy fats or unhealthy dressings, right? Because that's actually what we do. Oftentimes, I see this all the time, where you get a healthy vegetable, all right, and decide to cook them in butter, or you add saturated fat to the dish, and that's not something that you really, really want to do. Better choice if you want some oil to cook your vegetables is extra virgin olive oil. That is, unlike saturated fat, that is a polyunsaturated fat, extra virgin olive oil, and it also has polyphenols in it, like hydroxytyrosol and oleocanthal. Those bioactives in extra virgin olive oil, all right, can lower inflammation, boost your metabolism, cut off the blood supply to tumors, all kinds of benefits that you actually get if you just swap out the oil from butter. And by the way, butter tastes great, I admit that, but extra olive oil also tastes great, and you don't get the saturated fat, you get the polyphenols, and you get the monounsaturated fat, which is the beneficial fat in extra virgin olive oil as well. Okay, so olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, anti-androgenic, anti-inflammatory, good for metabolism. That's actually what you should be using rather than an unhealthy fat that you're actually going to cook the vegetables with. Now, if you don't want to drown your vegetables in unhealthy fats, all right, I'll tell you a classic thing that I see. People steaming their vegetables and then just going in the fridge and pulling out a plastic bottle of commercial ultra-processed salad dressing, okay? You know, the thing that's called like buttermilk ranch or blue cheese or Italian. Listen, those kinds of dressings, I grew up with those things. They taste pretty good, admittedly. But if you actually take a look at the ingredient label, you will see all kinds of things you don't want to be putting in your body, including emulsifiers and chemical preservatives, sometimes artificial coloring, and even sometimes artificial flavoring. So on top of that, you're actually putting usually less than healthy fats. You're drenching a healthy vegetable with something that's not so healthy. So always look at the ingredient list, all right? You want to avoid sugar, added sugar. You want to avoid artificial coloring and flavoring, all those things we just talked about, all right? Why? Because those things in ultra-processed food, those ingredients, okay, those artificial ingredients will damage your gut microbiome, all right? Your gut microbiome and the healthy bacteria in your gut, you have 39 trillion of these bacteria. They're in your colon. And guess what? Those bacteria contribute to your health. They lower inflammation. They boost your immunity, so you're protected against invaders from the outside, like bacteria and viruses, as well as invaders inside your body, including cancer cells. So you don't want to be messing with your gut microbiome, all right? And yet, when you're actually drenching healthy veggies, even perfectly cooked, with these unhealthy fats and additives, you actually are spoiling the milk, so to speak. You're drowning them in materials and ingredients that are actually not good for your health. All right, very convenient if you want to buy it, but I would encourage you to make your own dressing if you want. How do I make my dressing? Extra virgin olive oil, balsamic vinegar, or some other kind of vinegar. I like to mash up an anchovy, which has got healthy omega-3 fatty acids. You know the kind, you can get them in a jar. They're packed in salt or brine, and they come out in little slivers. You take a metal bowl and add extra virgin olive oil, a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of an anchovy, some lemon juice. Smash it all up together. It's going to be really great. You can even put a dollop of mustard in there and mix it up, and you've got yourself a really amazing, powerful vinaigrette. That's a healthy way of making a dressing, as opposed to pulling out the pre-made, factory-made stuff with all those additives in it, which you don't actually want to have. All right. So I'm not against dressings on veggies. All right. You could actually make them really umami and taste great. Okay. But don't use the store-bought stuff. Now, this also goes for marinades for grilled vegetables, right? Another way to actually have veggies is you put them on the grill and they taste really good, right? Grilled bell peppers, I love to do that in the summer. I'm trying to think of other veggies you could actually grill. Grilled tomatoes actually taste great. Asparagus, another great veggie. But do not actually get one of those store-bought bottles, plastic bottles of dressing. Probably contains microplastics too. And, get all this beautiful grilled veggie and then just douse it with the store-bought, factory-made, ultra-processed thing. You're going to drown it with unhealthy ingredients. So you're going to cook your vegetables, cook them in a healthy way, but also if you're going to dress them up, which I think is a great idea, try to avoid drowning them in saturated fat like butter, and avoid dousing them with ultra-processed dressings or marinades. Not good for you, okay? Now, another way to really enhance your veggies when you cook them is to use spices and herbs, right? So rosemary, thyme, oregano, crushed chili flakes. These are all ways that you can actually combine with vegetables in order to be able to make them light up and give them a different flavor profile, so you're not just getting that boring boiled broccoli that you used to have in the school cafeteria. So many recipes. If you want to actually check one out, just go to Google and search broccoli, for example, and thyme or chili flakes, and you'll actually see how other people do it if you hit video as well. All right. Stay curious when it comes to actually cooking foods, enhancing flavors. And when you're traveling, this is what I do when I'm actually traveling. I'm always on the lookout for how other cultures and other cooks, including at restaurants, the chefs, how do they prepare their foods in ways that I wasn't familiar with, but actually, man, does that taste really good. Then I jot a little note down on my phone. I take it back home with me and I try it out myself. All right. So again, that's another trick. If you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of your veggies, especially if you want longevity. Hope you learned something from this video. And if you liked what you have seen, don't forget to hit subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Dr. Lee out. Hi there. If you enjoyed watching this video, I know you'll love the next one. Stay here and check it out. and I'll see you there.